Hey guys, Super Mario Josiah here, and in this video, I'll be ranking every episode of the classic Ben 10 series. And for those of you who don't know, Ben 10 is an action cartoon that aired on Cartoon Network from December 27, 2005 to April 15, 2008, with the series being created by Man of Action, a group of 4 people, and the show itself following a 10-year-old boy named Ben Tennyson, who's on a summer road trip with his grandpa Max and cousin Gwen. And while at a campsite, Ben ends up finding this mysterious watch called the Omnitrix, a device that allows him to transform into 10 different alien heroes to protect Earth from all sorts of evil threats. The show ran for a total of 49 episodes with 4 seasons, as well as a movie too. And it's also one of my all-time favorite Cartoon Network shows, right next to Regular Show and The Amazing World of Gumball. So with that being said, let's get started with Season 1. So for the first episode, we have And Then There Were 10. So basically this episode shows Ben leaving school for the summer and is going on a road trip with his grandpa Max and unfortunately his cousin Gwen. And while they're at a campsite with Ben thinking it'll be the worst summer ever, he ends up finding the Omnitrix, a mysterious watch that allows him to transform into 10 different alien heroes, and uses those powers to protect Earth and helping other people. And for being the first episode of the show, I think it's pretty great. It does a great job at introducing you to the characters and what the show's about. You basically have Ben himself, who is our main character, as he's basically a snarky and immature but well-meaning 10-year-old kid who wants to use the Omnitrix to help people and hates injustice. There's also his grandpa Max, who is a loving and caring grandpa, who is basically a loving, caring, and wise grandpa to Ben and Gwen, and also serves as Ben's mentor throughout the classic series. There's Ben's cousin Gwen, who can also be snarky just like him, but is more responsible and more intelligent than him. And we have the main antagonist, Vilgax, an evil warlord who wants the Omnitrix. And we're also introduced to 4 aliens in this episode, being Heat Blast, Wild Mutt, Diamond Head, and Accelerate, with Heat Blast being a humanoid fire alien who has the ability to shoot fire and fireballs, and was also the first alien Ben turned into when accidentally starting a forest fire when first getting the Omnitrix. Wild Mutt, an orange dog-like alien who lacks eyes but has the ability to use his sense of smell to see, and has sharp claws and teeth that can rip through steel. Diamond Head, a big crystalline alien who has the ability to morph his arms into diamond blades and can create crystal constructs. And he was also the one to defeat the giant Vilgax droid by the end of the episode. And Accelerate, one of my personal favorite aliens in the classic series. He's basically this velociraptor-like alien who has super speed. And I think he's a pretty cool alien. I really like him. So yeah, I think this is a pretty great start to the show. Anyways, moving on. Next up, we have Washington, BC, and I find this to be a pretty good episode. Basically, this episode shows a mad scientist named Dr. Animo, who is one of my favorite Ben 10 villains, using this device called the Transmodulator to mutate animals and bring old ones back to life, like a dinosaur and a woolly mammoth. With the Tennysons trying to stop him before he turns Washington, D.C. into Washington, B.C.
He said it!
Meanwhile, Ben tries to find the gold Sumo Slammer card, until Max tells him that being a hero isn't about others knowing that you did something good, and that being a hero has its own reward, which I think is a pretty good message by saying you can't always get everything you want in life. I thought that was a pretty good message Max gave to Ben. And we're also And we're also introduced to 3 new aliens in this episode, being Gray Matter, Forearms, and Stinkfly. With Gray Matter being a gray frog-like alien who is pretty small but is also pretty intelligent, and he's one of Ben's smartest aliens, although his intelligence isn't shown that much in this episode, because basically there's a scene where Ben uses Gray Matter to find the Gold Sumo Slammer card in a cereal aisle. Then there's Forearms, who's one of Ben's go-to aliens in the classic series, and he's also one of my dad's favorite aliens, who's basically this big red alien with 4 arms who has super strength. And Stinkfly, an insectoid-like alien who has the ability to fly, can shoot goo from his 4 eye stalks and mouth, and has a stinger tail that can be used as a natural weapon. And he's also one of the first aliens Ben ever named on screen. And I think Dr. Animo's a pretty great villain in this episode too. Like I said, he's one of my favorite Ben 10 villains, and I think Dwight Schultz does a great job playing him. And for those of you who don't know, he's also known for playing Mung Daal from Chowder. I especially like the scene where Wolf Arms is fighting the reanimated woolly mammoth that was reanimated woolly mammoth that was made by Dr. Animo. Oh, he swings him on the trunk, which kind of reminds me of what Mario did to Bowser in Mario 64. I especially like the opening scene where Ben saves a bunch of civilians from a burning building as Heat Blast, and this was the first episode where we got to see Heat Blast's ability to absorb fire. Like I said, I think it's a pretty good episode. And before we move on, I wanted to point out that this episode also marked the first time Ben ever says his iconic "It's Hero Time" catchphrase.
Not if I can help it. It's hero time.
Next up, we have the Kraken. And honestly, this episode's just alright for me. The plot of this episode shows the Tennysons going on a fishing trip until Ben finds this mysterious creature known as the Kraken. Now I know it doesn't look like one, but hey, just roll with it. And it basically goes on a rampage, and after further investigation, Ben finds out that the Kraken was that the Kraken was a mother trying to protect her eggs from these scientists called Friends of Fish, and basically tries to get her eggs back. Now, the reason why I think this episode is alright is because it's just not that memorable for me. It does have some memorable moments, but not that many. And the villains of this episode are just generic bad guys who only appear in this episode. Even the character Captain Shaw, he just feels uninteresting because basically his main goal is that he wants to hunt the Kraken. And even after him and the Tennysons find out that the Kraken was a mother trying to protect her eggs, he still wants to hunt it. Like, what? And this is also the first episode to introduce us to Ripjaws, a fish-like alien who has the ability to swim underwater pretty fast and can breathe underwater, with his main weakness being is that he can't move on land. And he's also one of my least favorite aliens of the original 10. I mean, if you like Ripjaws, then that's fine. If you don't like Ripjaws, that's also fine. And this episode also marks the first time Ben mistransformed, like during a scene where Ben tries to save Gwen and the other civilians from the water, he tries to turn into Ripjaws, but ends up getting Accelerate instead.
I said Ripjaws, not accelerate. Stupid what?
So like I said, this episode is just alright. I mean, if there are some of you out there who like this episode, then that's fine. But to me, it's just an alright episode. Let's move on. Next up, we have Permanent Retirement. And I think this is a pretty decent episode, and it is a bit better than the last one. So basically, this episode shows the Tennysons visiting Ben's Aunt Vera in her retirement home, with Ben not being excited about this because he thinks Aunt Vera is boring. Until they learn that all the residents are are being captured by these shape-shifting aliens known as Limaxes and impersonate them and take them on their ship and threatening to eat them, with the Tennysons trying to stop them from doing that. Now, the reason why I think this episode is a bit better than the last is because the Limaxes are just these are basically just these generic villains who only appear in one episode, because by the end of the episode we learn that one of them survived, implying that they'll be coming back in a future episode, but that just doesn't get explored again. And there are also these moments with Ben basically learning to respect his elders, because he basically thinks that Aunt Vera is old and boring. Doesn't really land, since he basically says this.
You snuck out, yet Vera was hurt. She's old, she'll forget.
This episode also introduces us to two new aliens, being Upgrade and Ghost Freak, with Upgrade being this liquid metallic alien who has the ability to morph and shapeshift his body and can merge himself with different types of technology and enhance them, and Ghost Freak being this ghost-like alien who has the ability to become invisible and can phase through walls, with Ben basically using him to sneak out of Aunt Vera's house to mess around. And I especially like the fight scene between Heat Blast and the Limax by the end of the episode. I thought that was pretty cool. But what I said earlier about how basically Ben learning to appreciate Aunt Vera doesn't make any sense, because basically he goes from at the beginning of the episode, he goes from not liking Aunt Vera because he thought she was old and boring to appreciating her by the end of the episode, which I found kind of weird, to be fair. But aside from that, I think it's a decent episode, and it is a bit better than the last one. Anyways, moving on. Next up, we have a really amazing episode, Hunted. The plot of this episode shows Vilgax hiring 3 bounty hunters, Tetrax, Crab, and 66, and basically sends them to Earth to get the Omnitrix from Ben, and they easily overpower him, with one of them being Tetrax turning out to be good, and we basically learn that he's a Petrosapien, which is one of Diamond Head's species, and basically insults Ben on how he uses brute strength in combat rather than coming up with a plan. And by the end of the episode, Ben thinks out of the box by using gray matter to defeat both Crab and 66. So like I said, really amazing episode. It has a lot of great action sequences, and we also got to learn more about the Omnitrix when Tetrax confronted Ben. And this episode, this is also the first time where Diamond Head was shown, where this is also the first episode where Diamond Head had the ability to shoot crystals from his hands during the target practice scene at the beginning of the episode. And I do like the moral where Ben learns that he should always come up with a plan and use his aliens in creative ways rather than just purely relying on brute strength, like how Max and Tetrax told him. And by doing that, he basically uses gray matter to defeat the bad guys by the end. So yeah, like I said, really amazing episode. You should go check it out. Next up, we have Last Laugh. The plot of this episode shows the Tennysons going to a circus led by Zombozo, a zombie clown who feeds on people's laughter. And we also learn that Ben's afraid of clowns, and gets over his fear by the end of the episode by using Ghost Freak to defeat Zombozo. This is a really good episode. It had some pretty scary and dark moments, like the hallucinations Zombozo uses to scare Ben, and Gwen's dried up skin, and when Zombozo drains all of her energy. And Zombozo himself is a pretty threatening villain in this episode too, as well as his goons, the Circus Freak trio. Acid Breath, Fright Wig, and Thumbskull. This episode also has a major retcon in the later shows, because in this episode we see that Zombozo dies when Ben defeats him as Ghost Freak, but once we get to Ultimate Alien and Omniverse, he's shown to be alive, and in Omniverse he's shown to be an actual zombie. So how did he come back to life? Because I'm not sure how. And if any of you know, and if any of you in the comments know, then let me know. Anyways, this is a pretty good episode. Moving on. Next up, we have Kevin 11, and I find this to be a pretty great episode. So basically, after Ben uses Ghost Freak to sneak in and play the Sumo Slammers video game, he gets into an argument with Max, and they both end up having a fallout, with Ben going to an arcade and meeting this 11-year-old boy named Kevin, a kid who has the ability to absorb and manipulate energy, with Ben taking a liking to him and getting tagged along into criminal activities with him without realizing it, until seeing that Kevin is trying to crash two trains together and tells him that he's gone too far, and basically tries to stop him from doing that until Kevin absorbs DNA from the Omnitrix. Now, I really like Kevin. I think he's a pretty cool character. He's basically this dark parallel to Ben if he didn't grow up with the guidance from Grandpa Max. And I especially like what he looks like when he absorbs Ben's alien DNA, like how he absorbed Forearms and Heat Blast DNA in this episode. I kind of like how they look, especially his Forearms one. It looks so super cool. And Kevin does get better as the series goes on by UAF and Omniverse. I especially like the fight scene between Forearms and Kevin by the end of the episode, with Ben almost about to time out and trying to hold it him in that way he can defeat Kevin. I did like that. Like I said, pretty great episode. Moving on. Next up, we have Tourist Trap. The plot of this episode shows Max taking Ben and Gwen to a town called Sparksville. However, they both end up finding it boring. And after they end up messing around with, well, as Sonic calls it,
The world's largest rubber band ball?
yeah. So basically, after they accidentally screw around with the giant rubber band ball, they end up releasing these electrical aliens called Nosdenians, or megawatts as they call them, as they basically cause havoc around the town, and the Tennysons have to find a way to stop them. This is a pretty lighthearted episode, because it does have some funny moments that I do like. Like, there's a scene where Ben turns into Upgrade, and then Gwen asks him why did he choose Upgrade, and then Ben tells him it's complicated and that she wouldn't understand, and then Gwen asks him if the Omnitrix got him the wrong alien, and then Ben just says, "Shut up."
Watch didn't let you change into what you wanted it to, did it?
Another funny scene I like has to be at the beginning of the episode, where basically, after Ben saves a truck driver from a burning oil truck is Stinkfly. The kid that Ben was making that was making faces at Ben earlier in the episode shouts, "It's that monster that ate the kid!" And then Stinkfly says, "Wow, look at the time, gotta fly." And then he just flies away. That scene was pretty funny. And while on the topic of Upgrade and Stinkfly, this is the first episode where we see Upgrade have the ability to fire a laser from his eye. And in this episode, we also learn that Stinkfly's goo has the ability to put out fires, which would get wrecked on later on, but we won't get into that once. But we won't learn that once we get into season 2. And we also get to see Heat Blast's ability to fly. Yes, yeah, because this is Heat Blast is also used in this episode to fight off the megawatts at the end, and we basically see his ability to fly. So yeah, I think this is a pretty good episode with some really funny moments. Moving on. Next up, we have the Alliance. The plot of this episode shows a female gang leader named Rojo getting possessed by one of Vilgax's drones, with Vilgax forcing her to get the Omnitrix from Ben, with Ben trying to do everything he can to stop her, but it doesn't end up working, until getting the idea from Max to use Upgrade and possess Rojo and seeing a vision of with Ben ending up with until Ben ends up seeing a vision of Vilgax's Upgrade while possessing her. And while on the topic of Max, at the beginning of the episode when Ben fights Rojo, Max ends up getting injured, which causes Ben to take this seriously, and I really like how they did Ben in this episode. You do feel for him, because he basically sees that one of his family members got hurt and didn't want to endanger them, to the point where he decides to leave. That way he wouldn't endanger Max or Gwen. I also like how when Ben sees a vision of Vilgax's Upgrade, Max starts getting, by the end of the episode, Max starts getting worried about this, which would play in the season finale. So yeah, this is a pretty great episode. Although I think it is a great episode, but to me it's probably one of the weakest in the Vilgax centered Vilgax related episodes. But still a great episode. I like the story. Oh yeah, and before we move on to the next one, I wanted to point out how there was like a scene where when Heat Blast defeats Rojo, his Sia line was, when he says Sia, it was basically reused from like episode 4, where he basically says Sia Slimeball after he defeats the Limaxes, although here he just says Sia. So I just thought I'd point that out. Anyway, moving on. Next up, we have Lucky Girl, and surprisingly, it's the first episode to focus on Gwen. So basically, Gwen ends up finding this ancient charm of Bazel from an evil sorcerer named Hex, with the charm giving her incredible luck and ability, which gives her the idea to create her own superhero persona, Lucky Girl. That way she could get fame and attention, with Hex trying to retrieve the charm to complete his spell for ultimate power. Now, for starters, I think this is a really great episode. I like how it's the first episode to focus on Gwen for a change, and I really like what they did with her, because here we basically learn that she wants to be a hero just like Ben, with Ben learning that he can't be the only hero. I especially like the climax where the Tennysons fight off these reanimated statues that were brought to life by Hex, with forearms breaking the reanimated gargoyle's neck, which was a pretty cold moment for him. I really liked that. But there is one thing, while it is a great episode, there's one thing that a lot of people don't like about it, and that's the ending, where basically after the Tennysons defeat Hex, Gwen ends up destroying the charms. And I can kind of see why there are some people who don't like the ending, because Gwen could have been powerful if she kept the charms for the entire show, but she destroyed them because she didn't want all that power, so it made sense why she destroyed them and didn't decide to keep them. But aside from that, I think it's a really great episode. Moving on. Next up, we have a small problem. And yeah, I think we can all agree that this is definitely one of the weakest episodes of Season 1. So basically, this episode shows the Omnitrix malfunctioning with no explanation at all. This causes Ben to be stuck as gray matter for the majority of the episode, and gets kidnapped by an alien fanatic named Howl, and imprisons him at his place, with Gwen and Max needing to save him, until Howl takes Ben to this organization called the Forever Knights, a group of people that study and steal alien technology. Now, reason why I think this is the weakest episode is basically because there's barely anything going on. There's not much action in this episode. and there's nothing that interesting because basically Ben Ben spends most of the half of the episode trying to escape Howell's place, but ends up getting caught. And it kind of feels like I'm watching a Tom and Jerry episode rather than a Ben 10 episode. And the For Nights aren't all that interesting in this episode, to be fair. Because by the end of the episode, we learned that they were going to learn everything about the Tennysons, but guess what? They never did. And they do return in the next season, but we won't get to that. I do think they get a bit better. I'm not saying they get better, but they do get a bit better. But I do like some scenes of the episode which shows us more of Grey Matter's intelligence, implying to us that he's Ben's smartest alien.
Sure malfunction? Probably something stupid like the DNA splicing replicator copying a fragmented amino acid sequence. So this is what it feels like to be smart. Gwen, grab that pulse hypercore. Grandpa, the galenium capacitor. It's not Ben talking, it's Grey Matter. Do it!
So yeah, like I said, it's a pretty weak episode, and I think I'll definitely be putting it at the bottom of the list, right under the Kraken. Anyways, moving on. So for the penultimate episode, we have Side Effects. Basically, this episode shows Clancy, a mutant who has the ability to control insects, terrorizing the town when they threaten to destroy his home, and tries to wipe out the town in a nuclear reaction, with the Tennysons trying to stop him. Meanwhile, Ben ends up getting sick, which causes some of his aliens to be infected with his cold as well. And some of the aliens that get sick are Wildmutt, Forearms, and Heat Blast. When Wildmutt is sick, he no longer has the ability to see because of his schnoz being all clogged up. When Forearms is sick, he gains hives, which causes him to smell really bad. And Heat Blast might be the coolest one out of all of them. When Heat Blast is sick, he has the ability to generate ice instead of fire. And I kind of like this idea for the episode. I'm surprised they never explored it again in future series, and I've always wanted to know what would the other aliens be like if they got sick. Let me know in the comments down below. So yeah, I think this is a good episode. I like the idea of having Ben be sick and causing some of his aliens to be affected with his sickness as well. And like I said before, I kind of wish that idea was explored in the later series. Anyways, let's move on to one of the best episodes in the classic series. Next up, we have the Season 1 finale, Secrets. And this is definitely one of the best episodes in the entire classic series. So basically, Vilgax, now fully rehealed in a cybernetic form, comes to Earth to get the Omnitrix from Ben, and sends his drones to attack a city, while also capturing Ben in the process, which causes Max to get terrified as him and Gwen head to Mount Rushmore, which is actually a secret high-tech facility, and this is basically where we learn about Max's past as a plumber and how he's had a bit of history with Vilgax. But we won't get to that. We won't learn that until we get to next season. And we also learn about Vilgax's goal on why he wants the Omnitrix, so he can basically create an army of Omnitrix aliens to take over the galaxy. I also like how threatening they made Vilgax in this episode, basically being this strong force that not even Ben can beat. And the action scenes are pretty amazing too. I really like the scene where Heat Blast fights off Vilgax's drones, and before the fight even happens, he says this line.
Hey, what if you got someone with real firepower?
Yeah, that was a pretty cool line. I especially like the scenes where Ben quick changes through his alien forms while taking on Vilgax. And when Vilgax holds Max and Gwen hostage, Ben sacrifices himself. However, Max secretly self-destructs Vilgax's ship, which which gave Ben the chance to escape. So yeah, this is a pretty amazing episode and a pretty great finale to the season overall. And you should definitely watch this episode. It's pretty amazing, and I'd say it's going at the top of my list. Anyway, here's the ranking list for season 1. Season 1 was a pretty great first season. While it did have some weak episodes like the Kraken and a small problem, I still think it's great. Most of the episodes were great, and it had a really amazing finale. And like I said before, it's one of the best episodes in the entire classic series. Let's hope that improves with season 2. So for the first episode of season 2, we have Truth. And I think this episode does a great job at being a follow-up to the season finale. In this episode, this is the episode where we learn more about the plumbers, because basically the plumbers are these intergalactic space police officers that hunt down evil aliens. And this is also the episode where we meet Max's old partner, Phil, where we basically learn that he's using this device called the Null Void projector to re-release aliens they captured him and Max captured in the past for the Prophet, with the Tennysons trying to stop it. Like I said, it does a pretty great follow-up at being it does a pretty great job at being a follow-up to the season finale. I like how we learn more about the plumbers and more about Max's past. And like I said in the season finale, we learn that he does have a bit of history with Vilgax. Although I'm not a fan of the ending, to be fair, where basically after they beat Phil and recapture all of the aliens that were in the Null Void, Max decides to leave Phil in the Null Void instead of taking him out to have the police arrest him, which I can kind of see why he decided to leave him in the Null Void, but he could have had the police arrest him, to be fair. But aside from that, it's a pretty great episode. Moving on. Next up, we have The Big Tick. The plot for this episode shows a giant tick known as the Great One, which is basically this tick that sucks up planets dry, lands on Earth with its sole purpose is to destroy it by sucking it dry, with the Tennysons trying to stop it. Meanwhile, Ben unlocks a new alien named Cannonbolt, an alien who has the ability to curl up into a shell really fast at high speeds, with Ben using him to defeat the tick by the end of the episode. And this is a really good episode. It's the first episode to introduce us to Cannonbolt, as he's basically the first additional alien to Ben's arsenal. And I really like how Ben uses him to defeat the tick by the end. There's also another scene I like there's a montage where Ben uses most of his aliens except for Cannonbolt to defeat the tick, and it doesn't work. And I know I said he didn't use Cannonbolt, but he also didn't use gray matter for some reason. And I know some of you are gonna ask me, but what about Stinkfly? He does use Stinkfly in this episode, but he doesn't actually use him in the montage. Although while I do think it's a good episode, I wasn't that big on the ending, because basically after the Tennysons defeat the tick, Ben basically cleans the rust bucket as it's covered in tick goop. I don't even know why they did that. I don't even know why they made it I don't know why it was the ending, since Ben didn't even do anything wrong to deserve it. Why? That was basically just a torture moment. So yeah, aside from that ending, it's a really good episode, and it introduced us to one of the new aliens in the franchise. Anyways, moving on. Next up, we have Framed, and this is a really great episode. So basically, Kevin is back and out for revenge on Ben, and now having the ability to morph into aliens just like him, uses them to frame Ben for his crimes, with Ben needing to stop him before it's too late. Like I said, I think it's a great episode. I like how we got to see the return of Kevin, and this is also the first time where we see his mutated form in the classic series, and I think it looks pretty cool, where he's basically combined with all of Ben's aliens becoming Kevin 11, since it's, well, you know, Kevin plus 10 of Ben's aliens equals Kevin 11. I especially like the fight scene between Forearms and Kevin on the bridge. I especially like this line he says to Kevin before Kevin becomes mutated, basically telling him that he's not worth it and he never was.
Get back here and fight, Tennyson. I'm not through with you yet. But I'm through with you. You're not worth it. You never were.
Yeah, I really like that line. Although, my only problem with the episode is how Max and Gwen didn't believe Ben when they see Kevin as his aliens. Like, how did they not know it was Kevin? I mean, he didn't have the Omnitrix symbol. I mean, I guess you could say maybe it's because some of the aliens that Kevin turns into have the same clothing as Ben, which I guess could make sense, but still, it is kind of weird that Max and Gwen didn't believe Ben at first when they see Kevin as the one turning into his aliens. But aside from that, a pretty great episode. Moving on. Next up, we have an episode that I actually hate. Gwen 10. Now, before I move on to everything I hate about this episode, let's talk about the plot itself. Basically, the plot of the episode shows Ben with no explanation ending up in an alternate universe where Gwen finds the Omnitrix instead of him. And with absolutely no training, Gwen is shown to be much better at using the Omnitrix than Ben. Now, what I hate most about this episode is that it's basically a Ben torture porn. Because the episode's literally saying, oh, Gwen is so much better at using the Omnitrix than Ben, despite not going through the same training that Ben did in season 1, which is just so freaking stupid. That's basically what a pop-up trivia said when this episode first aired. Also, there's this scene where Gwen turns into Heat Blast and she was able to use there's a scene where Gwen turns into Heat Blast and she was able to spell her name out using fireworks, and Ben asked her how she did that, and she basically tells him, hey, when you got it, which is basically just so stupid. Which is basically also just so stupid.
Whoa! How'd you do that? It took me like a month to learn how to do that with Heat Blast. Hey, when you've got it, you've got it. You're lying!
And the designs on Gwen's aliens, they aren't all that good. I mean, aside from Diamond Head, I think Diamond Head looks cool, and I guess Heat Blast to some extent. The only alien designs for Gwen I don't like are Forearms and especially Gray Matter with how they gave him hair. I especially don't like Gray Matters. It just looks so creepy. Like, why? Another thing I don't like about this episode has to be the climax. Basically, Vilgax comes to remove the Omnitrix from Gwen and takes her to his ship. And when the Omnitrix malfunctions, and falls off Gwen's wrist, Ben tries to catch it, but it ends up landing on Max's wrist instead. Why? Why does this episode have to be so mean to Ben? Why? And I know some of you in the comments are gonna be like, Josiah, this episode isn't even canon to the Prime timeline. It just takes place in an alternate universe. I don't care. I still hate this episode. It's basically a Ben torture porn, and it's definitely going at the bottom of my list. Frick this episode. Moving on. Next up, we have Grudge Match. So basically, Ben and Kevin, now in his mutated form, get abducted by a giant spaceship where they're forced to fight alien gladiators. So now Ben and Kevin are forced to work together to fight against the alien gladiators and stop the person controlling the ship, Slick's Figma. Now for starters, this is a really amazing episode. I like how we see Ben and Kevin work together, with Ben teaching Kevin how to combine his alien powers. Oh yeah, and remember how in Season 1 I said that Stinkfly's goo was able to put out fires? Well, in this episode, Stinkfly's goo is shown to be flammable when Kevin combines it with Heat Blast fireballs. And I also like the fight scene between Ben and Kevin by the end of the episode, where basically Kevin uses combines his powers and uses them against Ben, and then Ben uses Cannonball, which is the only alien that Kevin doesn't have in his mutated form. I really like that scene. It was pretty cool seeing Cannonball be used again. And one thing I noticed about this episode is that in the final fight scene, Cannonball does look pretty small in this episode. But other than that, it's a really great episode. Moving on. Next up, we have the Galactic Enforcers. So basically, the Tennysons meet this trio of intergalactic superheroes called the Galactic Enforcers, which consist of Ultimos, Synaptac, and Tiny, with Ben taking a liking to them as he helps them try to stop 6-6 and his new partner Volcanus. That's right, this is the first episode where we see Volcanus for the first time in the series. So, I think this is a pretty solid episode, and I know there are some people who find this episode to be alright because the Galactic Enforcers are just these one-time characters who only appear in one episode, and I know some of you are going to be like, oh, but they appeared in Ben 10,000, but that episode doesn't count. Because the last time they actually appeared in the series was when Vilgax defeats them at the beginning of Season 3 of Ben 10 Alien Force. And there's also this scene I really do like where Ben transforms into Accelerate, and we get a transformation sequence of Ben turning into Accelerate while in his Galactic Enforcer's uniform. I really like that detail. I really like that transformation sequence. And I also like the ending where Ultimos offered Ben to join the Galactic Enforcers, with Ben already saying that he's already a part of a superhero team with Max and Gwen. And I think it did make sense for why Ben didn't want to join them, because he literally said this by the end of the episode.
Who wants to hang with a pack of wackos like that?
Although, aside from that, I found this episode to be pretty solid. Moving on. Next up, we have Ghost Freaked Out, and this is a pretty amazing episode. So basically, Ghost Freak ends up escaping the Omnitrix, revealing himself to be an evil ectoneurite known as the Scare, and wanting revenge on Ben by trying to possess him. That way he can get his hands on the Omnitrix to become whole again, with his only weakness being sunlight, meaning that he can't do it during the day and has to wait until dark, and also teams up with the circus freaks from Season 1. Like I said, this is a pretty amazing episode. I think the Scare is a great villain. Steve Blum does a great job playing him. And this episode did have some pretty dark and scary moments, like Ben's nightmare at the beginning of the episode, where basically he turns into Wildmutt to save a kid from a tree, but it turns out the kid was Ghost Freak. And there's also a scene where the Scare possesses Gwen to fight Ben to fight Ben while he's forearms. That was also pretty scary. I especially like the scene where Ben defeats the Scare by opening the curtains, revealing sunlight, and I like the screams he does. Like I said, Steve Blum does a great job playing the Scare in this episode. So yeah, like I Oh, like I said, I think it's a pretty amazing episode. And before we move on, I just want to point out that this is the first time an alien escaped from the Omnitrix, and this will happen as the series goes on. Moving on. Next up, we have another bad episode, Ultimate Weapon. Basically, Max becomes obsessed with finding this ancient mask called the Mask of Apuk, which is basically the key to finding this ancient sword in a temple in Mayan Mexico called the Sword of Akchua. And Max basically brings Ben and Gwen along with him while trying to stop the Forever Knights from getting their hands on it. Now, I can see why there are a lot of people that hate this episode, myself included, mainly because how out of character Max is, because basically throughout most of the episode, he's so obsessed with wanting to get the sword. Like, he even puts Ben and Gwen in danger multiple times when they're in the temple. Like, yeah, I can definitely see why people don't like this episode, mainly because of Max's characterization. Even Ben points this out in the episode too.
Ever since that alarm went off, that sword is all you think about.
You two have to keep your eyes on the prize and remember what's important here.
We do remember. Do you?
This is a pretty bad episode, but I won't say it's as bad as the Gwen 10 episode. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still think this episode is bad because of how Max is characterized here, but I don't think it's as bad as the Gwen 10 episode. Although I still think this episode sucks though. Anyways, moving on. Next up, we have Camp Fear. So basically, this episode shows the Tennysons visiting this abandoned summer camp, which is being taken over by these mushroom aliens that are being controlled by this plant creature known as the mycelium, with Ben a new alien named Wildvine, an alien who has the ability to use his arms like vines, can grow and control plants, and can throw explosive seed bombs from his back, with Ben basically using him to try and stop the mycelium. I find this to be a pretty good episode, and I think the alien creatures are and the mushroom aliens in this episode are somewhat creepy with having two mouths and all. And yeah, also I hate to make a Ben 10 I hate to make a reference to the Ben 10 reboot, but there are these two characters named Andy and Mandy, and they kind of remind me of Ben and Gwen in the Ben 10 reboot, where in the reboot their relationship is handled a lot better compared to how the relationship is in the classic series, where they basically get along more compared to their original counterparts. But yeah, I think it's a good episode, and it did a great job at introducing Wildvine. I think he's a pretty cool alien. Anyways, moving on. Next up, we have Tough Luck. And much like the Lucky Girl episode from Season 1, this is another episode to focus on Gwen. So basically, Hex is back and breaks free from prison with help from his niece, Charmcaster. And this is the first episode where we're introduced to Charmcaster. And wants to get his revenge on Gwen by trying to find this magical stone, with Gwen finding it at a Las Vegas Magic Convention Center, which causes her to become Lucky Girl again, with Hex trying to take it from her. That way he can complete his spell by creating new charms of Bazel. However, Charmcaster ends up betraying Hex and uses the spell for herself. That way she can create it with Ben using Wildvine to defeat her. So I think this is a pretty good episode. I like how this is the first episode to introduce us to Charmcaster, and I like how it's another episode to focus on Gwen. I especially like how we got to see Ben use Wildvine again to fight off Hex and beat Charmcaster at the end by destroying the 5 charms of Bazel that she was gonna create. I did like that. So yeah, I think it's a good episode. And before we move on, there's this minor error in the episode where basically there's a scene where Ben is participating as an assistant for a magician's act. Where he basically says Ben Tennyson at your service. Although for some weird reason the subtitles say Ben 10 at your service, which is kind of weird. And a lot of people think that this is the first time Ben called himself Ben 10. But if you listen closely, he's actually saying Ben Tennyson at your service. So I just thought I'd point that out. Well, like I said, pretty good episode. Moving on. Next up, we have They Lurk Below. And honestly, I don't really care about this episode. So basically, the Tennysons visit this underwater resort owned by Max's old friend Donovan and his grandson Edwin. And as the resort ends up getting attacked by these cyber squid-like aliens who are looking for a power source that Donovan used for the resort. Now, the reason why I never really cared for this episode is because there's nothing too interesting, and I was just bored half the time. And I feel like there are some people who say that this is their favorite episode, mainly because Ripjaws is in it during a scene where he fights off the cyber squid aliens while underwater. And it's basically the last time he'll ever be useful in the classic series. But like I said, Ripjaws is one of my least favorite aliens in the original 10. And Edwin and his grandpa are just these, much like with other supporting characters in the classic series, they're basically these one-time characters who only appear in one episode. I mean, I guess I kind of liked Edwin on how he basically hangs out with Ben and Gwen for most of the episode, and he somehow finds out Ben's secret while Ben is Stinkfly. Because when I saw this episode as a kid, I always thought he knew it was Ben mainly because he had the same shirt as him. Because if you know that, like, some aliens have the same clothing as Ben, and Stinkfly has a black and white suit, so it makes sense why he so it makes sense why Edwin would knew that Stinkfly is Ben. But aside from that, pretty mediocre episode. Moving on. So for the penultimate episode, we have Dr. Animo and the Mutant Ray, and I find this to be a pretty good and enjoyable episode. So basically, Ben ends up screwing around with the Omnitrix, which basically leads to the faceplate falling off.
Well, who didn't see that coming?
So yeah, basically after the faceplate falls off, it causes the Omnitrix to have weird fusions with his aliens. And the fusions we see in this episode are Stink Arms, Diamond Matter, and Heat Jaws, with Stink Arms being a combination of Forearms and Stinkfly, Diamond Matter being a combination of Diamond Head and Gray Matter, and Heat Jaws being a combination of Heat Blast and Rip Jaws. And out of all of them, I think Diamond Matter might be my favorite. I guess Stink Arms is kind of cool, but he doesn't use any of Stinkfly's powers aside from flight. He doesn't use Stinkfly's ability to shoot goo, and Heat Jaws is just Rip Jaws but with Heat Blast limbs plastered on him. And also, Dr. Animo ends up escaping prison and takes the Omnitrix faceplate to make mutations with Ben's alien DNA, like a bat mutated with Heat Blast DNA, and also plans on using a giant mutant ray to mutate the entire world, with the Tennysons trying to stop him and also trying to retrieve the Omnitrix faceplate as well. Like I said, I think this is a pretty good episode. I think this is a pretty good episode. I do like how we get to see Dr. Animo again, and I think some of the fusions are pretty cool. And also, while they're at Dr. Animo's lab where he builds the mutant ray, there's a scene where he was gonna shoot the mutant ray at Ben, but Max ends up saving him and he gets mutated with Stinkfly's DNA. And this is basically what he turned into.
Aw, sick! What the heck is that?
Dude, this is pretty fucked up right here.
Yeah, aside from that disgusting image of Max, I still think it's a good episode. Moving on. So for the Season 2 finale, we have Back with the Vengeance. And much like with Secrets from Season 1, it's one of the best episodes in the entire classic series, and one of my favorite ones in the classic series. So basically, Vilgax is back and joins forces with Kevin to destroy Ben and take the Omnitrix from him. Meanwhile, Ben ends up unlocking Master Control, a feature the Omnitrix has that allows him to transform from alien to alien without timing out. And he basically uses Master Control to screw around with his aliens, with Vilgax and Kevin showing up to kill him, with Max trying to capture them with Max using the null void projector to capture them in the portal, with Vilgax taking Ben along with him. So now Gwen has to go inside the null void portal in order to save Ben before it's too late. Now, do I think this episode is better than Secrets? No, I don't think so, but I think both are great episodes. I think Secrets I do think Secrets is way better though, but they're both great episodes. Much like with Secrets, it had a bunch of great action sequences and some pretty cool moments. I especially like the scenes of Ben using Master Control to fight off Vilgax and Kevin, and I really like how we got to see what the Null Void looks like when Ben, Kevin, and Vilgax are inside the Null Void. I especially like the chase scene through the Null Void where Vilgax and Kevin are chasing Ben and on these Null Guardians while he's changing through his aliens, and it's even way better. And the deleted scene is even way better. Although I think the main problem some people have with this episode is Ben's character, because he's way more obnoxious in this episode than usual, but he does end up learning his lesson by the end, although he does go back to being selfish. But luckily he does get his comeuppance by the end of the episode.
And some big-time get-backs. Maybe a face full of stink-fly goop, or a tangle of wild vine tendrils, or...
Gray matter? Oh no, I forgot I zeroed out the Master Control.
Don't sweat it. There are only like 999 million more combinations for you to try.
I especially like this scene where Ben gets the Omnitrix back after him and Gwen make it out of the Null Void. Because basically there's a scene where while they're in the Null Void, Vilgax and Kevin have Gwen hostage and threaten to hurt her with Ben and giving up the Omnitrix in order to save her. And basically Ben basically thought Gwen threw the Omnitrix in order to give it to Vilgax and Kevin, but it turns out that it was just a bomb and Gwen had the real thing the whole time. I kind of like that twist. And the picture I'm showing right now is a pretty cool shot. Basically, after when Ben gets the Omnitrix back, I really like it. It was even used in the intro sequences for seasons 3 and 4. Like I said, this is a pretty great season finale, and I recommend that you guys watch it. Anyways, here's the entire ranking list for season 2. Season 2 is a pretty amazing season, and it was a pretty great improvement over season 1. We had more world building, and we got introduced to 2 new aliens, being Cannonbolt and Wildvine. While this season did have some bad episodes and one that was pretty mediocre, I still consider this to be an improvement over season 1. Anyways, let's move on to season 3. So for our first episode of season 3, we have Midnight Madness, and honestly, I think we can all agree that this wasn't a great start to season 3. It's a pretty bad episode. So basically the episode shows the Tennysons going to this giant mall where Ben gets mind controlled by a man named Sublimino, a master of hypnosis. And at night he uses his aliens to steal things while going on a rampage. And by the climax, he ends up creating this giant watch that mind controls everyone in the mall except for Ben because plot conveniences. And basically uses that to steal things from the mall, then all of America. And yeah, that is a pretty stupid plan now that you think about it, with Ben having to stop him. Now, like I said, it's not a great start to season 3. It's a pretty dumb episode. And Ben being mind controlled is kind of dumb, to be fair. Yeah. And Sublimino isn't even that interesting. I also noticed that he's played by Richard Stephen Horvitz, the same guy who plays Grey Matter in this show, but not even he can save this episode. And I think it's kind of weird that he returned in the -10, because he's not even all that interesting. He's not threatening, and he's not enjoyable to watch. But the only thing I did like about this episode might be when Ben used Wildvine to stop Sublimino. Like, I'm not even sure why Ben chose Wildvine, although I'm guessing it's because maybe since Wildvine's a plant, he can't be mind controlled, even though Wildvine's a living plant alien. But who cares? This is still a bad episode, and it's definitely going at the bottom of my list. Moving on. Next up, we have Ben 10,000, and this is a pretty amazing episode, because much like with Secrets and Back with the Vengeance, it's one of the best episodes in the entire classic series, and this might be one of the best episodes in the entire franchise as a whole. So basically, while Ben and Gwen are playing rock, paper, scissors to see who can get a birthday cake for Max, because today is Max's birthday and Ben forgot to get one for him, a mysterious sorceress ends up capturing Gwen and takes her into a mysterious portal, with Ben following them as Accelerate, as they end up in this futuristic world where Ben is now a world-famous superhero known as Ben 10,000, and the mysterious sorceress happens to be Gwen, who now goes by Gwendolyn in the future, who now learns martial arts and uses magic from the charms of Bazelle, with future Gwen bringing past Ben and Gwen to the future, or that way they can help future Ben and stop future Dr. Animo as he revived Vilgax. Like I said, it's a pretty amazing episode. I like how we got to see what the future is like, and I like some of the alien designs we see, especially Accelerates. I think Accelerates looks cool, and I also like Diamond Heads. The only one I'm not a fan of has to be Wild Mutts, on how they gave him a tail and how the Omnitrix is placed on his face. I don't really like that design. There's also this pretty funny moment that I do like, where there's a scene where present-day Ben asked future Ben, if while in his Accelerate form, if he could show him all of his other 10,000 aliens, and then future Ben in his Accelerate form is like, how about never? It's just so funny.
When can you catch me up on my other 9,990 heroes?
How about never?
And the aliens that we get introduced to in the future are Spitter, Buzzshock, and Artiguana, with Spitter being a pufferfish alien who has the ability to spit high-pressured slime from his mouth, Buzzshock being a battery-like alien who has the ability to shoot electricity and is one of Kellen Goff's favorite aliens. And if you don't know who Kellen Goff is, then go watch The Ink Tank. And Artiguana, a lizard alien who has the ability to breathe ice. I especially like the part where both of the Bens are fighting off future Vilgax and they both get their butts kicked, with past Ben telling his future self that Vilgax might know how all his aliens can fight, but he doesn't know what Ben Tennyson can do, and that's the first time we see future Ben's design, and it was a pretty cool moment, because it's basically saying that Ben can still be capable without being an alien. So like I said, I think it's a pretty amazing episode, and it's definitely going at the top of my list for Season 3. Anyways, moving on. Next up, we have a change of face. So basically, Charmcaster is back, and uses a body transferring spell to switch bodies with Ben, that way she can get her hands on the Omnitrix. Why does she want the Omnitrix, you might ask? Well...
I don't know.
Yeah, it's not even explained as to why she wants to switch bodies with Ben just so she could get the Omnitrix. Well, I guess you could say maybe she wants the Omnitrix so that way she can make her spells more powerful, and that's why she wanted to switch bodies with Ben, but it's not really explained in the episode. But anyways, when Charmcaster tries to switch bodies with Ben, it ends up failing, so she switches bodies with Gwen instead, with Gwen being in her body and Charmcaster being in her body, with Gwen as Charmcaster getting arrested and has to find a way to break out of prison, that way she can warn Ben and Max about Charmcaster. And when Charmcaster tries to switch bodies with Ben again, it ends up failing again, with Charmcaster being back in her body and Ben and Gwen switching bodies, with Ben being in Gwen's body and Gwen being in Ben's body. So now they both have to find a way to stop Charmcaster before she makes another body transferring spell. Now, I think this is a pretty good episode. I think the body swap idea is pretty cool, since I do like some body swap episodes in TV shows. I thought that was pretty cool. Although my only problem with it is like when the characters switch bodies, their voices change or they stay the same. Cause like at the beginning of the episode, when Charmcaster and Gwen switch bodies, they have the same voice actresses, with Carrie Walgren playing Gwen in Charmcaster's body and Megan Smith playing Charmcaster in Gwen's body. But when Ben and Gwen switch bodies, they switch voices. Like Tara Strong plays Ben in Gwen's body and Megan Smith plays Gwen in Ben's body. Although aside from that problem, I still find this to be a pretty good episode. Moving on. Next up, we have Merry Christmas, the first and only Christmas special in the entire franchise, and the only holiday special in the entire franchise. So basically, after the rust bucket breaks down, the Tennysons come across this Christmas-themed village in the desert called Holiday Village, and they don't even explain to us like what it is or how it was even made.
Don't question it, just clap like the mindless seals that you are.
And while they're in Holiday Village, Max ends up getting mistaken for Santa Claus by an old elf named Mr. Jingles, and basically kidnaps him, with Ben and Gwen turning into elves, and also getting help from another elf named Elsgood, as he basically tells them that they have to destroy the Jingulator, that way they can break the curse and save Max before it's too late.
Dude, this is pretty fucked up right here.
Yeah, nothing about this episode makes any sense, because there are a lot of things about this episode that raises a lot of questions, like, how was Holiday Village made? Why does Mr. Jingles mistake Max for Santa Claus? Does Santa Claus even exist in the Ben 10 universe? I don't frickin' know. But there are some parts that I do find enjoyable. I mean, I do like the part where Accelerate and Gwen get chased by these wooden nutcrackers that were brought to life. I especially love the scene where where Ben uses gray matter to go into the Jingulator in order to destroy it. I especially like this part where he jumps over these square platforms, which kind of reminds me of a video game. I also liked how Ben uses Stinkfly as a Rudolph, that way That way they could deliver presents to all the children. Although some people might have argued that Accelerate should have done it instead of Stinkfly, but hey, what can you do? Like I said, nothing about this episode makes any sense. I think it's a pretty weird episode, but it does have some good things, but yeah, it's still a weird episode. Moving on. Next up, we have Ben Wolf. So basically, this episode shows the Tennesseans going to New Mexico to visit Max's old friend, Wes Green, with Ben falling in love with her granddaughter, who is also one of my least favorite characters in the entire franchise, Kai Green.
Here we go.
Here's the clicker. No one would blame you.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure most of you who are watching this video probably don't like Kai either. And after Ben gets into a fight with an alien werewolf called a Loboan, or as they call it, a Yanaldushi, it ends up scratching the Omnitrix, scanning its DNA, with Ben unlocking a new alien named Blitzwolfer, who is basically an alien werewolf who has the ability to use sonic howls and has sharp claws. Now, this episode's fine. It's not bad by any means. It's a fine episode. I do like how we see the Omnitrix's capture mechanic as it can scan DNA. I think that's cool. I do like how we get to see Blitzwolfer for the first time, although it sucks that this is his only appearance in the entire classic series. But the only thing I didn't like about this episode has to be the ending. Because by the end of the episode, we learn that Kai only liked Ben just because he could turn into aliens. And that sucks.
The thing is, Ben, you seem like a nice guy, but you're just not my type.
Huh? I thought you really liked me.
Well, that was before you turned back into, well, you.
I'm so pissed off right now. I hate you.
And what's even worse about that scene is that by Omniverse, when Kai returns, the writers are literally like, oh, well, Ben and Kai are destined to be together despite the fact they have no chemistry with each other, and the fact that Kai only likes Ben because he could turn into aliens, mostly Blitzwolfer. Exactly. They literally have no chemistry with each other whatsoever. And whenever they're on screen with each other, they just spend most of their time arguing like a bunch of 5-year-olds, like it's actual relationship development, when it's not. But hey, at least Gwen defended Ben by the end of the episode after Kai broke his heart. I did like that scene.
Train him? Tame him? He's a person, not a pet. You can't talk to my cousin like that.
Thanks.
Only I can talk to my cousin like that. You just blew it big time.
So yeah, aside from that terrible ending, I think it's a fine episode. Nothing too bad about it, it's just fine. Moving on. Next up, we have Game Over, and I find this to be a pretty great and enjoyable episode. So basically, Ben and Gwen end up getting zapped into Ben's video game console and get transported into Sumo Slammers, Ben's favorite video game, after Ben turned into Upgrade by merging with his video game console and getting struck by lightning. With Ben's aliens now being scattered as Omnitrix tokens, they team up with Ben's hero Ishiyama. That way they can head to the final level to get the upgrade icon and get out of the video game world and make it back to the real world, while also dealing with Ishiyama's arch nemesis Kenko. Like I said, it's a pretty great episode. I think the action scenes are pretty great, and I really like the character designs on Ben and Gwen while they're in the Sumo Slammers universe. I especially like the alien designs some of the aliens have, like Forearms and Cannonball. I do like Cannonballs because he looks just like a sumo. And the visuals are pretty great in this episode too. And I did like how we got to see what the Sumo Slammers universe is like. And I also like the scenes of Ben trying to impress Ishiyama, but he constantly gets toned down by him, and favoring Gwen over him. With Gwen telling Ben, and by the end of the episode, when they face Kenko, Ben wants to prove to Ishiyama that he can be a hero as well. With Gwen telling Ben that he has to start thinking like a hero instead of just impressing him. But when Max comes in, that's right, Max came in the video game world as well. Max comes into the video game world as well. Ishiyama starts taking a liking to him now. Yeah, like I said, it's a pretty great episode, and I think you should give this one a watch. Moving on. Next up, we have Super Alien Hero Buddy Adventures. So basically, this episode shows Tim Dean, a cartoon writer, making a cartoon about Ben's alien hero. It was called Super Alien Hero Buddy Adventures.
He said it!
And basically, when Ben ends up seeing this cartoon, he's not having any of that crap, and goes to Planetary Studios to confront the guy who made the show, being Tim Dean, until he gets distracted by his childhood superhero Kangaroo Commando and tries to help him become more popular by wanting to become his sidekick. Then Tim Dean gets framed for a crime. Then there's this whole conspiracy on who actually made the show. Then Tim Dean and Abel North, who is actually Kangaroo Commando's real identity, gets kidnapped by Kangaroo Commando, with Ben having to save them. And we actually learned that at the Kangaroo Commando that kidnapped both Tim Dean and Abel North was Abel North's twin brother, Kane North.
Well, who didn't see that coming?
Yeah, so basically Abel North's brother, Kane North, is basically the one who's behind this conspiracy theory. And why did he do this, you might ask? Because he was the one who came up with the idea for Super Alien Hero Buddy Adventures, and he was the one who created Kangaroo Commando, but his brother took all of the credit. Yeah, that's basically his entire motive as to why he did this. And nothing really gets resolved in this episode. And this episode doesn't even know what the plot, and I don't even know what the plot of this episode isn't even about, because there's a plot about Ben getting ripped off, and another plot about a conspiracy theory between Kangaroo Commando. Like, what is this episode even about? Is it Ben getting ripped off, or conspiracy theory with his childhood hero? Yeah, much like with Ben Wolf, it's a fine episode, nothing too bad. This episode's just alright. Anyways, moving on. Next up, we have Under Wraps. So basically, this episode shows Max taking Ben and Gwen to a farm. That way they can value hard work after they've been nothing but lazy pieces of crap.
Looks like a job for...
Ben, I'm too lazy to fill a water tank. Tennyson. And only him, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, you gotta admit, that scene was pretty funny. So basically, while they're at the farm, they end up finding this evil alien mummy who's looking for its main power source, being corrodium, with this purple glowing crystal that turns anyone into a mutant zombie if they get near it, with the Tennysons trying to stop him from using the corrodium to mutate the entire world. Now, I find this to be a pretty great episode. The first half of the episode was alright because it just shows Ben and Gwen doing farm work, but it does pick up with its second half where they fight the mummy. I did like the fight scenes with the mummy, like Accelerate fighting the mummy. I really like that scene, and even Diamond Head fighting the mummy as well. I really like that too. So yeah, like I said, I find this to be a pretty great episode. Oh, and before we move on to the next episode, I forgot to mention that this episode marks the first time Gwen uses her magic spells from the book, from the spell book she took from Charmcaster in A Change of Face. So I thought I'd just point that out. Anyways, moving on. Next up, we have Monster Weather, and this is definitely one of my favorite episodes of this season. So basically, Max takes Ben and Gwen to a music festival in Chicago to see his favorite band Shag Carpeting play. However, a weatherman and his robot named Sam, basically the weatherman tries to change Sam to control the weather until Sam ends up becoming this giant weather monster, with the Tennysons trying to defeat it. I think this is a pretty great episode. It has a bunch of fun action sequences. I think the action sequences look pretty good. I especially like the action scene between Heat Blast and Sam, where Heat Blast goes supernova hot in order to defeat him. I also like the scene where Ben turns into Forearms and uses two guitars in order to defeat Sam. I did like that scene. Although the one problem some people might have with this episode is Ben himself. Basically, in this episode, Ben acts even more of a jerk than usual, because he basically acts even more selfish after seeing of Max wanting to see his old band play instead of getting him a new Sumo Slammer Digi downloader after Sam destroyed his old one. And I can kind of see why some people don't like how Ben is portrayed in this episode. I mean, I can definitely agree. Ben is kind of annoying. I mean, check out this scene, for example.
Those weirdos make Wildvine look normal. Besides, who listens to records anymore anyway?
That's not the point.
No, the point is, what's more important? Getting a new Digi download or some sea alien trash that I kick butt on, or staying here just because you say so?
What a jerk!
Yeah, while Ben's character is kind of annoying in this episode, I did like the moment that him and Max shared at the end. I think it was a pretty cool grandfather-grandson moment.
Ben Tennyson! Are you really rocking out to Shag Carpeting?
Actually, they're pretty cool. For a bunch of fossils.
Here, let me give you a better view. I tell you what, we can head out to that convention once the concert's done.
No rush. Hey, think they'll play an encore?
Aw, I like that.
So yeah, aside from Ben's character in this episode, I still think it's a great episode for being one of my favorite episodes of the season. Anyways, moving on. Next up, we have The Unnaturals, and this happens to be a baseball episode. Too bad South Park already did that before them. So basically, this episode shows Ben's baseball team, the Cannons, with his bullies Cash and JT being on there competing for the summer against another baseball team called the Squires. And when Ben sees that the Cannons are doing terrible against the Squires, he decides to use Accelerate to cheat. That way he can make the Cannons. That way he can make his team win. And in this episode, we basically see that we basically learn that Accelerate has the ability to move so fast that he can slow down time for some reason.
Don't question it. Just clap like the mindless seals that you are.
Then we learn that the Squires are actually robots built by the Forever Knights. That way they could kidnap the president.
What the fuck?
And all of this, literally all of this happened after a forced message about cheating was because the Forever Knights was behind all of this by the end of the episode. Like, did they choose the Forever Knights because they didn't want a generic villain who only appears in one episode? It kind of felt like they were like, Okay, so instead of choosing a generic villain for this episode, let's have the Forever Knights be the villains instead. That way the audience can like them a lot more. And it's just really freaking stupid. And it's not even made clear as to why they even want to kidnap the president. Like, why? It just felt like something the writers decided to pull out of their butts. So, I think this is an alright episode. Nothing too bad about it. Oliver was this funny joke, though.
We want a picture, not Harry!
Benjamin.
What?
Like I said, it's an alright episode. I think South Park did a way better baseball episode than this. Anyways, moving on. Next up, we have The Visitor. So basically, this episode shows a mysterious alien named Xylene, who is Max's old girlfriend, by the way, coming to Earth to give the Omnitrix to him. Because this is basically where we learn that the Omnitrix was originally meant for Max instead of Ben, with Ben finding it by mistake. Which basically causes Ben to get insecure about this and starts becoming jealous of Xylene and not trusting her, basically thinking that she might take Max away from him and Gwen while also taking the Omnitrix with her. However, an old Vilgax drone appears and they have to destroy it, with Ben destroying it with a new alien name by unlocking a new alien named Upchuck, an alien who has the ability to eat different objects and can spit them out as projectiles. I think this is a pretty great episode. I think Xylene's a pretty cool character. I kind of wish we saw her again, and I do like her voice. I think Grey Delisle does a great job playing her, and yeah, that's right, she's voiced by Grey Delisle. And I also like how Ben goes from not trusting Xylene I like how, basically Ben goes from not trusting Xylene to liking her, to basically respecting her by the end of the episode when they work together to defeat the giant Vilgax drone. And I also kind of like that we basically learned that the Omnitrix was meant for Max instead of Ben. Although I think it does make sense for Ben to have the Omnitrix instead of Max, because basically if Max had the Omnitrix, it would affect his age since he's basically an old man. But yeah, I think it's a pretty great episode. Anyways, moving on. Next up, we have The Return. In this episode and the next one are the first two-part episodes in all of Ben 10. So basically, this episode shows a Frankenstein-like alien named Dr. Victor as he recruits the werewolf and the mummy from the previous episodes of this season to help him with his plan on resurrecting the Scare, and also helping with the Scare on his master plan, with the Tennysons needing to stop them. Ben unlocks a new alien in this episode named Snarrow. Now I know some of you guys are going to be like, but didn't Ben unlock Snarrow in Under Wraps? Well, technically he did scan the mummy's DNA, which showed a silhouette of Snarrow, but when Ben tried to turn into him, he ended up getting upgraded instead. So this episode marks the first time Ben actually uses him, and Snarrow is basically this mummy alien who has the ability to use to stretch the bandages on his body, and he's also Alanzonia's favorite alien. I hope I pronounced that right. And if you don't know who he is, then go check out his channel. I think this is a pretty great episode. I think Dr. Victor's a pretty cool villain. I think his design looks sick, and his voice is also pretty cool too. And I also like the fight scene. This fight scene between Accelerate and Dr. Victor, or where he's trying to resurrect the Scare, and I did like that scene. No, and there's also this pretty funny moment where while Ben is trying to stop a bunch of prisoners, a stink fly. Basically, the prisoners basically prisoners that are riding the bus, and Ben tries to stop them as Stinkfly. There's this pretty funny moment where one of the prisoners calls him a butt ugly bug, and Stinkfly's like, "Who are you calling butt ugly, butt ugly?" That was pretty funny.
We sure got some butt ugly bugs down here.
Who you calling butt ugly? Butt ugly?
And while it is a great episode, the only problem with it is Ben himself.
Here we go.
Basically, the problem with Ben in this episode is that he acts a lot more arrogant in this episode than usual, where he's basically saying that he could do everything by himself and that he doesn't need Max and Gwen's help, despite the fact that they're supposed to be a team. Because at the beginning of the episode, when he tried to stop the prisoners that were escaping on a bus, he decided to do it on his own, with Max literally telling him that him and Gwen could help. Yeah. But aside from Ben's character in this episode, I still think it's a great episode, but the next part is even better. Anyways, moving on. Next up, we have Be Afraid of the Dark, and this is a really amazing episode. So basically, now that Zascare has returned, his master plan is to use the corrodium, which was seen in Under Wraps, to mutate the entire Earth into zombies, and wanting to take it over as their new ruler. I'm not even sure why, since he's already the High Ectolord of Anar Transil, but hey, who cares? So, with the Tennysons being the only surviving people, trying to stop him and saving the Earth, and trying to stop him and trying to save the Earth at the same time, with Ben unlocking a new alien named Frankenstrike, a Frankenstein-like alien who is, much like with Buzzshock, another electric alien who has the ability to generate electricity from two coils on his back. Like I said, I think this is a pretty amazing episode. I really like the fight scene between Frankenstrike and Zascare while they're in space, and I really like Zascare's true form. It looks super cool. And there's also this pretty confusing scene. Like, there's a scene where Ben uses upgrade to merge himself with the rocket. That way he can get to Gwen and Max in time, since Max and Gwen did go up into space in the last episode. To catch up to the mummy, and when Dr. Victor electrocutes Upgrade, he's not immune. He's immune to it for some reason, because basically, if you don't remember back in Season 1 with Taurus Trap, we learned that Upgrade's main weakness is electricity. So how come he's not weak to electricity in this episode? But aside from that, I still think it's a pretty amazing episode. But before I move on to my ranking list for Season 3, I just wanted to let you all know that at the ending, after the Tennysons defeat Zascare and the Halloween trio, Ben ends up re-unlocking Ghost Freak, although this doesn't get brought up again, as it only happens in this episode. And for some reason, the silhouette shows Zascare rather than Ghost Freak himself. I'm not even sure why. And what was the whole point of Ben re-unlocking Ghost Freak in this episode and him not using him in later episodes, because it doesn't really get brought up again. But aside from that, let's move on to the ranking list for Season 3. Season 3 was a pretty amazing season. We had some banger episodes like Be Afraid of the Dark, The Return, Ben 10,000, Monster Weather, and Game Over. Those are some pretty great episodes. And it's definitely one of my favorite seasons of the classic Ben 10 series. I also like the introduction and of the Unur aliens being Blitzwolfer, Snarrow, and Frankenstrike, and the introduction of Upchuck. And the final season we'll be doing is Season 4, and I find that to be one of the weakest seasons of the classic series. Anyways, let's move on to Season 4. So for the first episode of Season 4, we have Perfect Day. So basically, this episode shows Ben thinking he's having a perfect day, only to realize that it's a dream simulation created by Enoch and the Forever Knights. That way Enoch can get his hands on the Omnitrix while Ben is asleep. With Ben, Gwen, and Max needing to get out of his dream before it ends up becoming a nightmare. Now, for being the first episode of Season 4, I find this to be kinda good. Although, to be fair, I think this idea works better with the Ben 10 Ultimate Alien episode, Night of the Living Nightmare. I think they did that idea way better, but I still think this is a good episode. I think it's a pretty decent episode. I kind of like it. I kind of like it. I did like how we got to see Ultra Ben. I did like how we got to see Ultra Ben I did like how we got to see Ultra Ben as well as Ultra Max as well. I like that. And I kind of like how Ben uses Accelerate to put Enoch to sleep. And by the end of the episode, Enoch gets fired from the Forever Knights with the Forever King taking his place. But don't worry, we'll get to him later once we get to a later episode. So yeah, like I said, I find this to be a decent episode. Moving on. Next up, we have Divided We Stand, and I actually find this episode to be better than the last one. So basically, Ben ends up unlocking a new alien named Ditto, an alien who has the ability to clone himself, and he's also voiced by the legendary Rob Paulson himself, who's also known for playing Yakko Warner from Animaniacs.
Another alien? Okay. So let's see what you can do. We paint ceilings, and only ceilings. We don't paint floors because they're beneath us.
However, Dr. Animo ends up escaping from prison and kidnaps one of the Dittos to create an army of mutant Lepidopterans, which are stinkfly species, by the way, with the Tennysons having to stop them. I think this is a great episode, and like I said, it's way better than the last one. I like how this is the first episode to introduce us to Ditto, but I think Echo's a way better cloning alien, but Ditto's still cool, and Rob Paulson does a great job voicing him. I especially like the climax with the Tennysons battling Anima. Ben uses Ditto to defeat the mutant stinkfly clones and to defeat Animo by creating multiple clones to surround him and get on top of him. I like that. And I especially like this funny scene where Ben hits his foot on a rock, and another funny scene where while Ben is Ditto, one of the Dittos hits his foot on the rock and the other two felt the same pain. I like that scene, was also pretty funny. Like I said, it's a pretty great episode. Also, look, Ripjaws is back.
Okay.
Next up, we have Don't Drink the Water. So basically, Ben and Max come into contact with water from the Fountain of Youth, which causes Max to become a kid and Ben to become a toddler. This also causes some of his aliens to become younger as well, with the aliens being Forearms, Wild Mud, Stinkfly, and Heat Blast. And I also noticed that Ben actually gave nicknames to his younger versions of Wild Mud and Stinkfly, with Wild Mud being called Wild Pup and Stinkfly being called Stinky Fly. Technically, Ben didn't call him Wild Pup, but Gwen did, but who cares? And for some reason, Forms and Heat Blast didn't get any nicknames when in their more younger forms for some reason. What would you call them? Let me know in the comments. I also noticed that while Ben is a toddler, he kind of sounds like Timmy Turner from the Fairly Odd Parents, which makes sense because Tara Strong plays both characters.
My
So now the Tennysons have to find the source to the Fountain of Youth. That way Ben and Max can return to their respective ages, and also trying to stop Hex from reaching the fountain first. Because if he uses the fountain to become more younger, he'll become a lot more powerful. Now, what do I think of this episode? Well, honestly, it's pretty mediocre for me. Nothing too special about it. I mean, I did like seeing more younger versions of Ben's aliens. I thought that was cool. And I also like the scene where while Ben is fighting Hex as Heat Blast, while Ben is fighting Hex as Heat Blast, Gwen basically rage baits him. That way he can become supernova hot. I kind of like that scene.
Told you, Ben. Told you, told you, told you. Stop it, stop it, I knew he'd go supernova hot. All 4-year-olds have meltdowns.
Like I said, it's a pretty mediocre episode, and I think I'll be putting it below the list for season 4. Mainly because of this dumb scene that I just can't stand. And I'm gonna ask all of you this question once. Did you actually find this scene to be funny when you first saw this episode? Like, did you actually laugh at this scene?
No.
Yeah, I thought so. Anyways, moving on. Next up, we have Big Fat Alien Wedding, and I find this to be a pretty great episode. So basically, the Tennysons attend Max's nephew's wedding, with Ben not being excited about this because he has to wear a tux. And we basically learn that the nephew's wife is actually an alien called a sludge puppy.
Hey! That term is derogatory!
I mean, Lenopins, who are basically these shape-shifting aliens who are made out of mud. With the wife's mother, father, as well as her ex-boyfriend Logan Frame being Lenopins as well. Okay, I know the wiki just labels him as Camille's ex-boyfriend, and yeah, the nephew's wife is named Camille, and the nephew himself is named Joel. But much like how Kuro the artist did with his rewrite on the -10, I'm gonna call him Logan Frame for this video. So basically, Camille's parents and Logan try to stop the wedding from happening, with the Tennysons needing to stop them. Now, like I said, I think it's a pretty great and enjoyable episode. I especially like the fight scene between Heat Blast and Camille's parents by the end. I especially like this line he said before the fight even happens.
Oh yeah, I'm all fired up.
There's also this pretty nice moment between Ben and Gwen, and in the episode where while they're in the rust bucket, Gwen's teaching Ben how to dance, and it does go pretty good until Max comes in and says that that's sweet. And when the two see this, Ben pushes Gwen on the floor. It was just so funny.
Hey, I'm dancing.
Oh, that is so sweet.
Grandpa!
There's also another funny scene where while Ben is fighting Logan as Diamond Head, they end up in another room that's filled with a bunch of fog. And then when Ben tries to find Logan, he ends up scaring a lady with the mud mask and a towel on, and then he says, "Oh, sorry lady, I thought you were a butt ugly alien," and the lady just throws a pillow at him.
Gotcha. Sorry, lady. I thought you were a butt ugly alien.
So yeah, I think it's a pretty great and enjoyable episode. Moving on. Next up, we have Ken 10. And this episode is actually a sequel to Ben 10,000. So basically, this episode shows Ben getting his son Ken an Omnitrix for his 10th birthday, with Ken wanting to use it to be a hero just like his dad, and thinking that his dad won't trust him with doing hero work. He then ends up befriending a kid named Devlin, who, spoiler alert by the way, is actually the son of Kevin, who now goes by Kevin 11,000.
Didn't see that one coming, did ya?
This episode also originated the iconic Kevin meme on the ink tank.
Kevin?
So yeah, basically Devlin basically ends up using Ken to break his dad out of the null void. So now both Ben and Ken have to stop Kevin, until Devlin realizes that his dad is actually a jerk, and then he sends him back into the null void and ends up becoming friends with Ken again, and stays with the Tennysons. Now, I find this to be a pretty great episode for being the sequel to Ben 10,000. I like how we got to see what more of the future looks like, and I really like Ken. I think he's a pretty cool character. He basically kind of feels like Ben back when he was 10. I did like that. And there's also this moment where after Kevin defeats Ken, Ben ends up getting mad about this and turns into Waybig Ben turns into Waybig to frickin' destroy Kevin. Oh yeah, and this is also our first time seeing Waybig as well. And I also like how Ken used Master Control after unlocking it by gray matter to defeat Kevin. I did like that. So yeah, I think it's a pretty great episode. Moving on. Next up, we have Ben for Good Buddy. And honestly,
the criticism I give you is it's trash.
Yeah, as you could tell, this is definitely one of the worst episodes in the entire classic series. So basically, this episode shows a group of 3 people called the Road Crew hijacking the Rust Bucket and basically modifying it with slick details, with the Tennysons needing to stop them from stealing it. And for some stupid reason, Ben and Gwen are shown to be powerless against the Road Crew. Like, what? Why? And not to mention that the Road Crew aren't even all that good villains. They suck. I mean, I do like the leader, though, who's played by John DiMaggio. He's basically the fat redneck wearing sunglasses, but not even he can save this episode. And what's even worse about this episode is that the Rust Bucket itself is portrayed to be this useless piece of junk that doesn't work right. Whereas in the previous seasons, it was portrayed to be this high-tech vehicle ever since the season 1 finale. And I think it was cool to see Upchuck again in this episode, but he literally gets his butt kicked by the Road Crew. Like, why? And Ripjaws is also in this episode, but much like with Upchuck, he doesn't even do anything. So yeah, as you could tell, this is one of the worst episodes of the entire classic series, and the worst episode of the season. But don't worry, there are more terrible episodes to come in later series. Anyways, this is definitely going at the bottom of the list. Moving on. Next up, we have Ready to Rumble. And honestly, this is a pretty mixed episode, to be fair, because I hear a lot of people saying this is a good episode while other people saying it's a bad one. But I kind of find it to be a pretty solid episode. So basically, the episode starts off with Ben thinking that he broke Gwen's laptop.
Well, who didn't see that coming?
Yeah, I think we can all agree that Upgrade or Gray Matter would have been useful in that scene. So basically, after thinking that he broke Gwen's laptop, Ben decides to get her a new one by entering a wrestling tournament as Forearms. That way he can win a $10,000 prize money and competes against a bunch of mutants, until he discovers that 2 of the mutants named Porcupine and Gator Boy are working for a mob us who has their mother held hostage, with Ben teaming up with the that way they can save her while also stopping him and his henchmen. Like I said, I think it's a pretty solid episode. I did like the fight scenes between. I did like the matches between Forums and the other mutants in the mutants. I thought those were pretty cool scenes. I especially like how Porcupine did a spin dash, and yeah, that's right. I had to make a Sonic the Hedgehog reference. I just couldn't resist it. I also like how we got to see Ditto again, and where he basically defeats the mob boss. I did like that. Although, while it is a solid episode, the ending is pretty stupid. Because by the end of the episode, we basically learn that Gwen's laptop wasn't actually broken and it just needed a new battery.
Really?
Yep. That basically means that Ben did all of that for nothing. While the beginning and end of the episode is kind of stupid, I still find it to be a pretty solid episode. But let's be real, South Park and regular show had way better wrestling episodes. So for the two-part special of this season, we have Ben 10 versus the Negative 10. So basically, Part 1 shows the Tennysons encountering every villain they face throughout the show as they join forces to assemble this team called the Negative 10, led by Lord Driscoll, the Forever King. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention that by the end of Perfect A, we actually got teased of the Forever King after basically replacing Enoch as the new head of the Forever Knights, as they all head to Mount Rushmore to find this piece of Earth tech known as the sub-energy, which Driscoll could use to make his armor a lot more powerful, with the Tennysons needing to stop him, as well as the rest of the Negative 10 as well. So yeah, as you could tell, the Negative 10 themselves aren't really all that good. I think some of the villains on here are pretty cool, like Dr. Animo, Charmcaster, and I guess Rojo to some extent, but some of the villains that are on here, like Clancy and Sublimino, I don't even know why Sublimino's here, kind of suck. And to be fair, the Negative 10 as a whole art is kind of lame. And there's also this kid named Cooper who joins the Tennysons at Mount Rushmore, who's basically this kid who has the ability to use technopathy powers, but honestly, he's kind of pointless, and he's more of a plot device. Because basically, there's this pretty annoying side plot where Ben and Gwen try to go see this movie, and they learn that Cooper has the winning tickets, and he can take one of them with him, and so they desperately try so hard to impress him. That way he can take one of them to see the movie. And yeah, like I said, the side plot's pretty annoying because it felt like they only created Cooper just so Ben and Gwen could have something to argue about, and we don't even know that much about Cooper as a character. We do get to see more of him in Alien Force, but all we literally see him do is act like a simp for Gwen. Although there are some things I did like about this episode. I like the opening scene where Ben stops two helicopter jewel thieves as Stinkfly, and he uses his slime to stop the helicopter blade from moving. I also like the scene where Accelerate fights a bunch of mind-controlled policemen, and after Sublimino hypnotize them. So yeah, the first part, it's pretty meh. Moving on. Next up, we have part 2 of Ben 10 versus the Negative 10. So basically, part 2 shows the Tennysons battling the Negative 10 inside the bunker at Mount Rushmore, with the Forever King using the sub-energy to make his armor a lot more powerful, with Ben digesting it as Upchuck and defeating the Forever King. And Ben also unlocks a new alien named Eye Guy, an alien who has the ability to shoot lasers from his many eyeballs. And his appearance in this episode was kind of weird because it's not even explained how Ben even unlocked him. I mean, he was seen in Secret of the Omnitrix, but it's not even it kind of made his appearance in this episode was pretty weird for people who've never watched Secret of the Omnitrix, to be fair. And this part 2 is okay. It much like with part 1, it has problems. Much like with part 1, Cooper is pretty pointless, since there's this part where he ends up getting mind controlled by Subliminal, and he's just forgotten about for most of the second half. And by the end of the episode, and Ben and Gwen asked him if he was going to take one of them to see the movie with him because he had the winning tickets, Cooper just toned both of them down. But I do think the episode does have some positives. Like, I did like the fight scene between the Tennysons and the -10 while they're inside Mount Rushmore, and I also like the battle between Upchuck and the Forever King by the end, and I did like that. Oh, and it's here where we learn that, the Forever King was actually an ex-plumber, so I just thought I'd bring that up. So yeah, this two-parter, it's not all that good. Part 1 was pretty bad, while part 2 is okay. And if you want to see a better version of this two-parter, go watch Crow the Artist's rewrite on the Ink Tank. You know how there are iconic TV shows that are so popular they end up getting their own movie, like SpongeBob, Tom and Jerry, The Simpsons, South Park, and Regular Show? Well, Ben 10 ended up making a movie called Ben 10 Secret of the Omnitrix, and I think it's a pretty great movie. So basically, the movie's plot shows Ben, after getting into a battle with Dr. Anima, who causes the Omnitrix to be in its self-destruct mode, which only the Omnitrix creator can shut off. So now Ben has to travel into space with Gwen, Tetrax, and the Omnitrix creator's assistant, Myax, to planet Xenon. That way the creator can shut down the self-destruct sequence, with Vilgax following them on the way there, with Ben throwing him into space by unlocking Waybig. Now, I did mention that at Ken 10 was our first time seeing Waybig, but this is the first time Ben unlocked him in the series. Basically, Waybig's this big red and white alien who is really big, and he basically has super strength.
That's a big alien.
Whoa! Check me out! I'm not just big, I'm way big!
And this is also the first time where we meet the Omnitrix creator himself, Azimuth, who's basically the same species as gray matter, being a Galvan. And I especially like the visuals of this movie. The movie, I do like how the movie has a lot more of a darker shading, and I like some of the planets they visit, being in Karsakon, which is basically this big prison like planet, and I do like some of the aliens we see there, and Xenon, where they go to meet Azimuth. I especially like this moment between Ben and Gwen during the final battle, where Ben, thinking he's feeling worthless without the Omnitrix after Azimuth deactivated the self-destruct sequence, with Gwen telling him that there were times where he saved people even when he wasn't an alien, and basically telling Ben that he is a hero even if he can't go hero. I thought that was a pretty sweet moment.
Vilgax is smearing us, and I can't do anything about it. I'm just a plain kid without the Omnitrix.
Don't you get it? You don't need that thing. What about all the times you saved Grandpa, or me, or lots of other people when you weren't an alien? You are a hero, even if you can't go hero.
Aw, I like that.
And fun fact, depending on which version of the movie you're watching, Ben will use a different alien in the opening sequence, with the original opening having Heat Blast, the gold opening having Eye Guy, and the blue opening having Accelerate. And for which one is canon, I'd say the Heat Blast one is canon. While this is a pretty great movie, it does have some problems. I'm not a fan on how Max didn't get to go with them and basically stayed on Earth for most of the movie. Although it did make sense in what Tetrax told him, but I still wish he went with Ben and Gwen to Xenon. I'm also not a fan of this scene because basically while they're at Xenon and when they first meet Azimuth, he basically insults Ben on how he uses the Omnitrix, with Ben telling him that sure he might have messed around with the Omnitrix, but he did use it to help a lot of people. And then there's this pretty upbeat music that plays in the background, which doesn't fit with the scene at all. Because the show does this like all the time, especially towards Omniverse, where they play a bunch of goofy music in the background in a serious or emotional scene, which doesn't fit the scene at all.
I didn't create a weapon. All of you did. I created the ultimate device for understanding all the beings of the universe. You and Vilgax are no different.
That's not true. Sure, I've messed around with the watch, but I've helped a lot of people with it too.
Yeah, you could definitely tell that music didn't fit with that scene when it was trying to be emotional. But aside from those two nitpicks, I still think it's a great movie, and it's definitely going at the top of the list. Moving on. So for the final episode of Season 4 and the final episode of the entire classic series, we have Goodbye and Good Riddance. And this is basically just a what-if story, much like with the Gwen 10 episode, because it's basically non-canon to the Prime timeline, with Secret of the Omnitrix being the real finale to the classic Ben 10 series. And I don't really think I mentioned that, but Secret of the Omnitrix is the real finale, while this finale is non-canon. So basically, this episode's plot shows Ben going back to his hometown Bellwood after the summer has ended, thinking that he's gone from hero to zero, until Vilgax and his drones show up to invade Earth, with Ben needing to stop him while also revealing his identity to his classmates and his parents. Now, for being a non-canon finale, I think it's pretty enjoyable. I think it's solid. I do like how we start off with I do like how the episode starts off with this comic book like aesthetic. Like, I did like that. And I think the final fight between Vilgax was pretty cool with was pretty cool with Ben defeating him as Accelerate with help from his dad. Oh yeah, and this is also the first time we see Ben's mom and dad, with his mom being named Sandra and his dad being named Carl. And also Ben has a dog in this episode, and he's never brought up or mentioned again in the later shows. I kind of wish we saw him again, but hey, who cares? I especially like the battle between Diamond Head and Vilgax's drones at the school. I did like that. So yeah, I think it's a pretty solid non-canon episode, and here's the entire list for Season 4. Yeah, Season 4 is definitely one of the weakest seasons of the classic Ben 10 series, and it's definitely one of my least favorite seasons of the classic series. While it did have some episodes I enjoyed and liked, such as Ken 10, Divided We Stand, and Big Fat Alien Wedding, and Secret of the Omnitrix being a pretty great movie, most of the episodes were either just okay, mediocre, or just plain bad, especially Ben for Good Buddy. And unlike with the previous 3 seasons, most of the episodes are just standalone, and there aren't any episodes that connect to the -10 two-parter, because the previous 3 seasons had episodes that connected to the season finale. I mean, I guess you could say the ending of Perfect Day connected to the -10 two-parter, but most of the episodes didn't connect to it, and they were just standalone episodes. But aside from that, let's move on to the entire ranking list. So yeah, Ben 10 is a pretty great is a pretty amazing show, and like I said, it's one of my all-time favorite Cartoon Network shows, right next to Regular Show and The Amazing World of Gumball. The characters are great, the aliens are pretty cool, the action scenes are pretty awesome, and the villains are pretty cool too. And I know some of you in the comments might be asking me, oh, so since you did the classic series, does that mean you'll be doing other Ben 10 shows like Alien Force, Omniverse, and Ultimate Alien? Yes, I will be doing those in the future. Anyways, thank you all for watching this video. I hope you like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope you liked it. Anyways, see you guys later.